Hello nurses, in today's video we're gonna solve applied anatomy previous latest question paper, that is Jan 2026 question paper with handwritten notes with handwritten answers. You will also get idea about how to write answers in RGHS exam and overall RGHS paper presentation you will get to know in this video. So watch the video till the end, and also this gonna be revision class for anatomy where I will also explain each question and its answers theoretical part in very simple language. So without delay, let's start the video. Also please share and subscribe my YouTube channel and watch the video till the end. So first, for long essay part, we have first question, that is gross anatomy of heart. So before that, I want to inform you that I was predicted that gross anatomy of heart question will be coming on Jan 2026 applied anatomy question paper. So as the same as happened before exam, I was uploaded a video that I was told this gross anatomy of heart question will be coming in 6th Jan 2026. So the same has happened after this exam. I was uploaded a video in that I was shown a proof that always my predicted questions will appear in upcoming RGHS exams. So for that video you can check the link in the description. You will get more information and proof that my prediction questions will come 100% in upcoming RGHS exams. So for this time also my predicted questions will coming in upcoming exam of June 2026. So for that also watch my applied anatomy important questions 2026 with the link in the description. And to get predicted question papers of all the subjects including anatomy, physiology, sociology, psychology for June 2026 upcoming exam, you can click the link in the description. Okay, so now let's come back to the video and let's solve this question paper of Jan 2026. So our first question is gross anatomy of heart. So the answer for this should be written like this, in which firstly heart structure, the structure of the heart, where the heart size is about the size of your clenched fist, that is nothing but the closed fist, and its length is 12 centimeter and 9 centimeter breadth. So the breadth and width are both same words, don't confuse in that. And the weight of the heart is 300 to 350 gram for male and 250 to 300 gram for female, and the heart is located at the thoracic cavity in the mediastinum, which is a place between the two lungs. So the heart is present between the sternum and vertebral column in the view of superior side, as you can see in the image. So if this is the middle line of the body, the 2/3 part of the heart is on left side and 1/3 of the part is on right side of the body. So actually the heart is present at the center of the chest cavity, but its more part, that is 2/3 part of the heart is on left side, and the small part, that is 1/3 of the part, is present on right side of the body. So in terms of vertebral column, the heart is located between the T5 to T8 vertebral levels. So another thing is that the base of the heart, that is down part of the heart, is this. Actually the heart is positioned ulta. So the upper part of the heart is, that is apex of the heart, is this, and the base of the heart, that is down part of the heart, is this. So the next coverings of the heart, the most outer structure of the heart is pericardium, and after this there will be layers of heart. So the heart has 3 layers. First one outer epicardium, middle muscular myocardium, and third innermost endocardium. So the epicardium is outermost layer, which is nothing but the visceral pericardium layer, which is a part of pericardium. So the outermost layer of the heart is pericardium, as you can see in the image. So pericardium is a double walled membrane sac that surrounds and protects the heart. The pericardium has 2 sub layers, fibrous pericardium, serous pericardium, where the fibrous pericardium is a fibrous strong layer that protects the heart from direct injury and prevents overstretching of the heart during heart contractions, like in high heart rate, during exercise, or during stress situations. Second one is serous pericardium, which has again 2 sub layers, that is parietal and visceral pericardium layers. So the parietal layer is attached to outer fibrous pericardium. So parietal layer is attached to outer fibrous pericardium and visceral layer is attached to heart, and visceral layer of pericardium itself is the epicardium. So in between this parietal and visceral layer, there is a fluid called pericardial fluid, which helps in reducing frictions among layers of the heart during contractions and relaxations. So next we have myocardium layer. As the name itself indicates, myo means muscles and cardio means heart. So this muscular layer of the heart is responsible for pumping action of the heart, and this muscular layer is the thickest layer among all of the layers of the heart. So the next layer is the endocardium, the innermost smooth layer of heart which lines heart chambers and valves. So this is all about the exterior structure of the heart. Next we need to write about the internal structure, that is interior structure of the heart, that includes heart chambers, heart valves. So in heart there are 4 chambers, that is right atrium which receives deoxygenated blood from superior vena cava and inferior vena cava and coronary sinus, and send all of the deoxygenated blood to right ventricle through tricuspid valve, and that right ventricle pumps blood to lungs via pulmonary artery through pulmonary valve. At the same time, while blood is filling in right atrium, the oxygenated blood from lungs will also coming in left atrium through pulmonary veins. Then the oxygenated blood will be sent to left ventricle through mitral valve, where left ventricle contracts and pumps oxygenated blood to overall body via aorta through aortic valve. So these 4 valves are present in heart. To prevent backflow of blood, the blood should be moved in only forward direction, from right atrium to right ventricle, from right ventricle to lungs, and from lungs to left atrium, and from left atrium to left ventricle, from left ventricle to all of the body. So now let's discuss about the blood supply of heart, which is done by right and left coronary arteries, where right coronary arteries supply all of these parts, and left coronary artery which is further divided into anterior interventricular artery and circumflex artery which supplies oxygenated blood to all of these parts. So now let's move to the venous drainage of the heart, which is done by cardiac veins which drain deoxygenated blood to coronary sinus which opens into the right atrium. So lastly, the innervation, that is nerve supply of the heart, is done by cardiac plexus, which is a network of sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves located at the base of the heart which regulates heart activity. Actually, the heart possesses autorhythmicity. It means the heart does not need brain and nerves to work and pump the blood. It has its own conducting system that maintain heart pumping and heart rate. But during running or during any exercises, we need more and more glucose and oxygen which is present in blood. At that situation, our heart rate should be increased. So their brain and nervous system role plays very well. The brain increases heart rate during exercises or danger situations and decreases during sleeping and resting to save the energy. So the heart conducting system just maintain normal heart rate. They cannot increase or decrease heart rate based on body's needs. So there the brain and nervous system plays a very important role. So for this activity, so to alter or edit the heart rate of the heart, the brain controls the heart through a cardiac plexus, a network of nerves, specifically vagus nerve, a part of parasympathetic nerves which decreases heart rate during resting and sleeping. And also cardiac plexus contains cardiac nerve, a part of sympathetic nervous system which increases heart rate based on body's needs during exercises or during running. So this is all about the nerve supply of the heart. So if the still pages are remaining, you can write these things also, like conclusion and all other things you can write. For 10 marks minimum, you need to write 3 pages and maximum you can write up to 5 pages. But also need to write good valuable content, not just filling papers. As you can see in the instructions given in the RGTS question paper, that is your answers should be specific to the questions asked. You cannot write anything related to the question. You need to write specific answers for specific questions. And in anatomy, only write about the structures, not about the functions. 1 or 2 points okay, but not more than this. Whatever the organ asked in anatomy paper, only its structure you need to write in paper. As the same in physiology, only functions you need to write. So this is a strict rule considered during paper correction. So don't mix the answers. Okay, so please share and subscribe my YouTube channel. So now let's move to the short essay part, which has first question, that is structure of larynx. The larynx, which is a hollow organ made up of cartilage located in the anterior part of the neck between the pharynx and trachea. The larynx has three main functions: breathing, voice production, and protection of the airway during swallowing food. Now let's see the its size and location. As already said, the larynx is present in neck between the pharynx and trachea, and it extends from C3 to C6 vertebral levels of vertebral column. The larynx is attached or hanged on hypoid bone present above the larynx with the help of muscles and ligaments. The length of the larynx is about 5 centimeters, width is 4 centimeters, and weight is approximately 30 to 40 grams in adults. So now let's understand its structure. The larynx is made up of three main components: 9 cartilages, as you can see here, and ligaments, which helps larynx to connect with hypoid bone, and muscles are present which vibrates vocal cords to produce sounds and to speak. Now let's move to the divisions of the larynx. The larynx cavity is divided into three main parts. That is, first one, supraglottis, which is the upper part of the larynx that includes the epiglottis, which closes the trachea during swallowing food to prevent food entering into the trachea and allows food to move into the esophagus, which opens into the stomach. So the food cannot go into the trachea. If the food goes into the trachea can get infected. So to prevent this, there is a epiglottis, and the second part is the glottis. So this is the middle part of the larynx that contains the vocal cords that vibrates to produce sound and helps to speak. And the third one is the subglottis, which is the lower part of the larynx, which extends further down to become the part of the trachea. It is simply acts as a passage for air traveling to the lungs. Now let's discuss another important part of the larynx, that is vocal cords. So the vocal cords are two bands of muscles tissue in the larynx that vibrates to produce sound, and another function of vocal cord is to prevent food entering into the trachea. The two vocal cords will automatically close the airway and trachea during swallowing food and remain open during breathing. So when the vocal cords are opened, the space between them is called as a rima glottidis. This open state of vocal cords is called as a abduction, which allows air to flow in and out of the trachea for breathing. And when the vocal cords are in closed state, it is called as adduction. So now let's discuss about the blood supply of the larynx. So the oxygenated blood is supplied by superior laryngeal artery, which is a branch of superior thyroid artery, which is a branch of external carotid artery, which is a part of aorta, and aorta is a part of heart. So in the same way, inferior laryngeal artery will also supply oxygenated blood from heart to larynx. And drainage of deoxygenated blood from larynx is done by superior laryngeal vein and the inferior laryngeal vein, which will drain deoxygenated blood to the heart for purification or oxygenation. And innervation, that is nerve supply to the larynx, is done by mainly vagus nerve and its branches like internal laryngeal nerve that senses and detect food or water entering into the airway to immediately close the vocal cords during swallowing food. And external laryngeal nerve control cricothyroid muscle that are involved in vibration of vocal cords to produce sound. And lastly, recurrent laryngeal nerve control intrinsic muscles of the larynx except the cryothyroid muscle. The intrinsic muscles control opening and closing of vocal cords with the help of laryngeal nerve. So now let's solve the second question of this question paper, that is classification of joints and explain humerus. Firstly, what is joint? A joint is a place where two or more bones meet, or it is like a junctions of bones. So joints are classified based on three methods, that is structural classification, functional classification, and biomechanical classification, in which structural classification has different types of joints, in which first one is fibrous joints, where bones are connected by fibrous tissue and there is no movement at all. For example, sutures of the skull. And the second one is cartilaginous joints, where bones are connected by cartilages and allow slight movement. For example, intervertebral joints. As you can see in the image, intervertebral disc. As your backbone can bend slightly, it cannot bend 360 degrees. So you cannot move these joints in a 360 degree. If you do so, that will be broken out because it has only limited movements. So the next third one is synovial joints. In these joints, bones are connected by a synovial fluid filled joint capsule that allow free movement. Example, shoulder joint and knee joint. So your limbs like hands are synovial joints which allows 360 degree movements, where your backbone does not allow 360 degree movements. It allows only limited movement. So next one, based on mobility, again classification of joints are done as you can see here, and the structural classification is as you can see, and there is also biomechanical classification of joints is done. So as you can see here, in this structural classification is very important, and specifically synovial joints and its subparts are very important. So now let's discuss about the next part of this question, that is explain about the humerus. So humerus is a long bone which is a part of the shoulder joint. Humerus is a long bone that extends from the shoulder to the elbow. It is an upper arm bone. Humerus is divided into three parts, that is upper end, shaft and lower end. So the first part, that is upper end, further consists of the head, anatomical neck and tubercles, where the upper part of the humerus, that is head of the humerus, is round and articulates with the glenoid cavity present in the scapula and become the shoulder joint, where the head is rounded and articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula and become shoulder joint, and neck below the head part gives area for attachment for the joint capsule and become the shoulder joint. And the next, the two tubercles, the greater and lesser tubercles, is the area where the muscle is attached for the movement of bones. And now the shaft of the humerus is cylindrical in shape. On the lateral side, there is a rough area called the deltoid tuberosity, where deltoid muscle will get attached. On the posterior surface of the humerus, there is a radial groove through which the radial nerve passes. On the anteromedial surface, there is a nutrient foramen, that is a hole through which the nutrient artery enters the bone and gives the blood supply to the bone. And now the finally lower end of the humerus consists of the tracula and capitulum, where the tracula articulates with the ulna bone and the capitulum articulates with the radius bone of the lower arm. So the lower arm will be having two thin bone, where the upper arm will be having only one bone, that is humerus. So the lower arm will be having two thin bone called radial and ulna bones. Then in humerus bone, there are also medial and lateral epicondyles where muscle attachment will happen. So now let's discuss about the blood supply of the humerus. The main blood supply is from the nutrient artery, which is a branch of the brachial artery. As I already told, in the humerus there will be having nutrient foramen, that is a hole through which the nutrient artery enters into the bone and gives the blood supply, that is oxygenated blood supply to the bone, and gives oxygenated blood supply inside the bone. And there is also other artery, you can check here, that supply oxygenated blood to the bone. And for venous drainage, there is a nutrient vein which will come out of the bone through the hole, that is nutrient foramen. And nerve supply to the bone are done by mainly axillary nerve that wrap neck of the humerus, and radial nerve that runs in the radial groove on the posterior surface of the shaft of humerus bone. And near the lower end, the medial nerve passes anteriorly, while the ulnar nerve passes behind the medial epicondyle, covering all parts of the humerus bone. So these all nerves will get connected with bones. So now let's move to the next question, that is explain cerebrum. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and it forms the major portion of the brain. So the cerebrum is divided into two cerebral hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, which are connected by corpus callosum. Each hemisphere is further divided into four main lobes, that is frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, where frontal lobe is responsible for higher functions like planning, reasoning, personality and voluntary motor activity. And the second one, parietal lobe, is necessary for processing sensory information such as touch, temperature, pain and spatial awareness. And the third one is temporal lobe, which helps in hearing. In this lobe the hippocampus is also present, which is important for new memory formation. And the fourth one is occipital lobe. It is responsible for vision and visual processing. All of things that you see is perceived in the occipital lobe of cerebrum. So all of these four lobes will be in pairs, as the cerebrum is divided into right hemisphere and left hemisphere. So in both right hemisphere and left hemisphere, four lobes will be present. So all of these lobes are separated by sulci and fissures. So the elevated raised folds of the brain, as you can see here, these structures which are elevated raised folds of the brain are called gyri. And the grooves or small depressions like a pit between elevated raised folds are called as sulci. If this grooves or depression is very large and deep, they are called as fissures. So as you can see, these elevated raised folds of the brain tissue is called as a gyri, and the depressed structures of the brain tissue between them are called as sulci. If these grooves are very large and deep, they are called fissures. So this is all about the sulci, gyri and fissures. So next thing is cerebrum. So the cerebrum outer surface is called as cerebral cortex, which is made up of gray matter because it's look like gray color, and it contains gyri and sulci, that is a folded structure of brain tissue, as you can see. So this is because which increases the surface area so that more and more part of big brain can settle in a small cranial cavity. It's like when you squeeze the paper that becomes small. As the same, the normal big sized brain forms gyri and sulci so that it can easily fit in a small cranial cavity. So the inner part of the cerebrum consists of white matter which contains nerve fibers. So within this white matter, again there are groups of gray matter called basal nuclei, and the cerebrum also contains cavities called lateral ventricles which are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So blood to the cerebrum is supplied by the two main arteries, that is the first one internal carotid artery and the vertebral arteries. So these two arteries form a circle-like structure called as a circle of Willis, which is a structured arrangement of arteries in a brain. We call it as a circle of Willis. So the venous drainage of the cerebrum is carried by the cerebral veins, which are divided into superficial veins and deep veins, which drain blood from brain to heart for purification or oxygenation. So now let's discuss about next question, that is classification of tissue. So our tissue is a group of similar cells that perform a specific function. In the human body, tissues are classified into four main types, that is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. So the epithelial tissue is tissue that covers and lines the body's inner surfaces, like lining the mouth. It means inner surface of the mouth is made up of epithelial tissue, and all of the internal organs inner lining or innermost layer is made up of epithelial tissue. And the second tissue is connective tissue, which is a most abundant, most present tissue in the body, that is connective tissue. So this tissue supports, binds and protects body structures. So it present in bone, cartilage, blood. So blood is made up of connective tissue, adipose tissue, ligaments, and all of these tissues are made up of connective tissue, or you can tell, so all of these tissues are a connective tissue. And then next type of tissue is, that is muscular tissue. So the muscular tissue is again classified into three types, that is skeletal muscle, which is present in bones or which are attached to bones, and the cardiac muscles are the muscles which are present in heart, and the smooth muscles are muscles which are present in organs. And the fourth one is nervous tissue. This tissue controls body activities and it detects stimuli and transmits electrical signals. So this nervous tissue consists of neurons and neuroglia. So neuroglia is a supporting tissue of neurons. So these are the four types of tissue, and again there is also subtypes of these tissues, you can see yourself. So the video is becoming so long, so for that I request all of the students to study the last question of this question paper by yourself. I think you guys will discuss this last question by yourself. So this was a solved question paper of BSc Nursing first sem of Applied Anatomy subject. So in next video we will be solving some another question paper. So to get these all notes separately, you can click the link in the description. And so this is all about the solved question paper of applied anatomy of Jan 2026 exam. So in next video we will also be discussing some other question papers, and to get all previous year question papers of RGHS applied anatomy, you can click the link in the description to get all subjects including anatomy, physiology, sociology, psychology, important questions. Click the link in the description. And to get predicted question papers of all the subjects including anatomy, physiology, sociology, psychology for June 2026 upcoming exam, you can click the link in the description. Okay, so this is all about the solved question papers. As you can see, this is how you need to write your answers in an RGHS exams. So there is also a paper presentation and things to be considered before writing RGHS exam. I was made a separate video for that, in which I have clearly discussed about the how to write answers in a question paper, how to organize your answers, and all of the things that should be considered before writing RGHS exam. I have discussed in that video, so you can click the link in the description to watch that video. So this is all about the solved question paper. So in next video we're gonna solve all other question papers of applied anatomy and applied physiology. And also share this YouTube channel with your friends so that everyone can pass in their exam and everyone can get good marks in their exams. So please share and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.